Okay, so once I have my sample cards all made, I have my name and my phone number, my web address in all of the slots. I printed it out on just regular paper. I printed out 3 because I'm planning on making quite a few samples, and whatever I don't use, I have like a little shoebox that I put all of my extra sample cards in to use for later. So now I need to cut them out. You can use regular scissors if you want. The way that, I don't know if you can see this, there's a tiny little line in here and it goes all the way up. That's how I know where to cut these. So the card is going to show my name here and then the fragrance here. And these other little lines here I cut above it and on the side of it. And so you can use scissors or you can use a paper cutter. I bought this paper cutter here at Michael's or Joann's or something. It was a cheaper one. I want to say it was less than $10. And basically it's just like the ones from school. There's like the blade. You can get a bigger one if you want, but I find that this works just fine. If I have a bigger piece of paper that I need to cut with, I just cut that first. I'll cut it in half and then put it here. And so anyway, I will show you how I make these. So because I have them all printed out, my printer doesn't print wonky. It's all pretty straight. I'm just going to cut them all together. And so I'm just lining up, maybe I won't because they're not staying straight. I'm just lining up the lines. Like I said, I'm cutting here first. I'm lining my blade up with here. So it's going to cut all the way down here. So it's a perfect line, just like that. And I'm going to go to the next one, which has the little tiny lines. I'm not sure if you can see it here. There's tiny little lines in here all the way down. So it's going to have one sample card here, 2, and 3. I'm not cutting on the solid line. I'm cutting on the tiny little line in between. And I'm able to just line it up with my cutter. And so I just go through and I cut them. And then now I'm cutting the end. And so now it looks like this. And so I'm going to do then is just clean it up. I'm going to cut it here and then I'm going to cut in between the 2 lines here. If you don't have a printer, if you don't have access to the group, or if you just haven't been granted access yet, you can still move on with making samples without using a card like this. You can use your address labels that Scentsy gives you in your starter kit when you joined. And so I just made 4 of them for now. And I'm just going to move on with that. So this is what they look like when they're all finished and done. And I'm just going to fold it right in the middle. I fold it right in half. So now one side has the fragrance and the other side has my contact information. Like I said, if you don't have these cards, that's fine. You can go ahead and just put them in the baggies and you can put your label on them. You can put them in a bigger baggie and just slap your label right on top of that. Whatever works for you. You don't have to do it this way. And so now I'm going to make my samples. This is just a cutting board, a plastic cutting board that I probably got from Ross somewhere that I don't use anymore. And this is a cheese knife that I do the same. It's serrated, so it looks kind of pretty. I used to melt the wax and make my samples that way, you know, with the pretty wax molds that we can get from the Success store on our workstation. But I just found that that takes too much time and effort, and I think I've got this down to a science. I'm able to make, I think, about 5 samples from each block. So I just pull it out and then I just cut it. I hope you guys can see this. I flip it over so that I can see where the indentations are, and I'm just going to cut right in the middle of that. Just like that. And so now it gives it a neat little like you can see the little tooth marks in there. And so then I work with the bottom of it up. This is the top of the wax. This is this part here. I flip this over and I work with the wax like that so that I can see the lines. And I feel like this here, my cutting board is a little bit wobbly, but it's easier to work with the flat side down. So once I have some pieces, I'm just going to clean it up a little bit. I'm just going to cut off, let's see if I can do this way. I'm just going to cut off a little bit of the side, just a little tiny bit so that it has the grooves in it here. If you can see the grooves. And I'm going to do it with the other side as well. And I'm just going straight down, and I'm not pushing hard. I'm just, because it's soft wax, I don't need to push hard. I think my clocks are going to start going off. I have a lot of clocks. Hope you can hear me. So now I just, I'm going to start cutting. I take about, I want to say maybe 1/8 of an inch, and then I just push straight down. I'm able to do that 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and I'm holding this here because I find the very last piece that I cut will tend to slide. And so now you can see that I have 5 pieces of sample here. This one's a little bit big. You could cut that into half if you want. The purpose of samples isn't to give people product that they can use, it's to get the fragrance under their nose. If you give people samples and they're nice big chunks, then they're never going to buy from you. So that's why I try to make my samples not like super tiny, but I try to make them small enough that it keeps them wanting more. So I was able to cut that last piece into 2 more. So I was able to get 6 samples out of 1 cube. And I'm putting that in my clamshell here. And I'm just going to do that with my other pieces. Some cubes you'll get more samples out of. Like this guy here. This is the weird side pieces that have it's much smaller on this side than it is on this side. I tend to do these ones, maybe instead of 5 or 6 slices, I'll do it with 4, leaving this little end here a little bit thicker. So I just slice it 1, 2, 3, 4. See, and that's a decent sized sample. And so I was able to get 5 out of this cube instead of 6 like the last one. And I just keep on doing that. Slice off the ends a little bit. I can't remember if I did that with the other one that I just cut. I'm sure I did. And then these little scraps here, I save them and use them for myself. And then I just slice it. 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, I have 5 samples. So I think I was able to make 16 samples just out of those 3 cubes. And now what I do is I take my baggies, and like I said, I get these at Walmart, and in the jewelry section, they're jewelry bags, and I think these are 2-inch by 2-inch. They're squares. They're not the little tiny rectangles, but you can use whatever bag you like. And then I'll just go ahead and stick them in there. I find it's easier to stick the small side, the top of it. It's easier to stick the top of it in the bag. And so then basically I just, there's my samples. If they're too big, I find that it's difficult to get in to the bag, and it's difficult to staple also. I'll just do a few of these just so that you can see. This is how I make my samples. The only thing that really changes is my cards. And the reason why I chose to do samples with aloe, water, and cucumber this time around is because I want to I chose a fragrance that crosses over into our body line, and it crosses over into our body line and into our laundry line, and also into our clean line. We now have bathroom cleaner and counter clean in this fragrance also, so people can, and then we also have our room sprays and our car bars, and I don't know if this is in a scent pack or not. I'm sure it is. It is a popular one. It's like Luna, and so that's why I chose to do samples in aloe water cucumber instead of something else. Before this, I did samples in Luna. These I made with cardstock, so you can see it's a little bit firmer, and but it's the same concept, same thing. It's just folded differently. This one folds up and down, and this one folds side to side, but I do them both the same. These cards also come in laundry, so you can make laundry samples. Depending on what I'm going to be using my laundry samples for, depends on the size. I have these bags here, are typically what I put my laundry samples in. They're, you can see the difference in size. I don't know if you can see that. Those are what I put my laundry samples in. Okay, I'll do one more, put one more piece of wax in, and then I'll show you how I then make these samples, finish them. So I take a stapler. Who knows where my stapler is? I can't remember the phrase, but anyway. So now I'm just gonna fold my cards in half. There's a line there. I don't necessarily fold on that line. I just fold it in half. If I cut it right, then it's gonna be perfect. So I just fold all my samples. So I have 4 here, and now I'm just gonna take my wax and stick it on the inside, and I'm just gonna staple it right on the top together. I'm gonna make sure that my bag is all the way at the top. I hope you guys can see that. There's a glare, and my computer's kind of at a weird angle. And then I just close it, and I'm holding it, and then I'm gonna staple so that it looks like that. They don't necessarily need to open it, but if they want to use it, then they're more than welcome to rip it open after you give it to them. One of the other reasons why I do it this way, instead of, I used to staple it here and then leave it like this, but I have a few customers that are always tempted to then open the bag here after I've stapled it, and then it kind of ruins my sample. And I don't know why, they always give it back to me. So that is why I staple it this way. And you can see the name is there, and it's just a cute little sample, and I have them in my purse, and I put them in my orders, and this is how I make my samples. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. I'm here for you, and I hope that this video helps you to know what I do when I make my samples.